folks, let's get into it because I finally got my hands on the Sharpton defamation lawsuit, and it has been illuminating to say the least. Because y'all know that my specialty is those details, and clearly these people are not detail-oriented. I'm sure by now many of you have seen the picture that I posted yesterday with a mysterious red watered-down liquid dripping down the side of the boat. Now, none of us can definitively say what this is, but it's clear to me that some people have never gone fishing in their entire life. Because those people trying to argue and say that the color is off, that it's too light, don't seem to get that fishing boats are specifically coated with something that makes things wash off of it, makes things thin, makes it easy to get things like fish guts out. But fine, if that's not enough for you, I'll keep going, because this TikToker literally over a month ago thought that they spotted this on the side of the boat. Now, they noticed those drips, and full disclosure, they did run it through like a AI cleanup thing, and this was the result of that. And even when you go back and look at the older versions of this video, as the angle changes, you can see those drippy marks. But I even took this picture of Warren on the Triton with his fish just so I can show you what it does look like on the side of the boat when there is a red fluid. To me, it seems pretty obvious what this liquid is, because I've genuinely racked my brain to think of something else it could be, and it just doesn't make sense for like an alcoholic beverage because it's on the outside of the railing. If you look back in the original Ceto video, this person here, who I suspect to be Ike Pyrone, was holding something in his hands, and I could never figure out what it was until we got the new pictures. Here you can clearly see a gray something in his hands. Well, going back to this picture of Warren with all of his fish, you'll notice that the Triton has a gray towel normally wrapped around it. Oh, why would they need a towel if they're in the middle of sinking, unless they're trying to clean something up? I also noticed something in this much clearer raw shot of the Ceto picture right here. We see something dark reddish here and like lighter red over here. Now, I have no idea what that is. It could be a towel. It could be a swimsuit cover-up. I did notice, however, it looked like somebody took a tool and, like, colored right here. What I do know is if you look at the original Ceto pictures and videos, there's nothing seemingly red here. But it does look like, however, is somebody's leg extending way too far into the console here. But again, can't say one way or the other what it is in the background there. What I can say, however, is remember when I said that the AI felt like it was being used on the Ceto video to obscure the identities of the girls? Well, I was at least half right on this, because this is a third girl. This is not the girl in the blue swimsuit that we've been seeing before. How do I know? Well, by now we've all seen this picture, this video 1,000 times, right? Girl in the blue swimsuit with the backwards hat. Well, I have suspected for a long time now that there was somebody being hidden back here, and I was proven right. Y'all see how this girl is wearing a watch? Well, right there in the original video / photo is somebody back there wearing a watch. Once you know to look for it, you can actually see it. Make sure you got your brightness turned all the way up, but you can see that reflection of the watch right here. At the same time, the girl in the backwards hat is over here. There are two major suspects for this, one of them being Lainey, but it seems to me like the more likely suspect is probably Ava, the other Seymour Hudson sibling. And as you can see here, she does in fact have an Apple Watch that sure looks a lot like the one right here. Also found extremely interesting in that letter, remember how we've seen this picture? We never really confirmed whether it was real or not until Tatum showed us. So somehow Officer Tatum had his hands on this picture, and you'll notice in the filing, oh look, what do we have here? The exact same swimsuit I talked about a couple days ago, and that whole friend group. So clearly this photo originated with the group that Katie got a ride from. As y'all know, I have said for a long time that I suspected that Katie was in those pictures and on that boat based on the swimsuit and the white hat that she's wearing in this picture that was taken on the boat of the people that came and gave her a ride after being left on the island. And I do think that maybe they joined this group because there's a couple of faces that look familiar. But I'll circle back to that later. I want to point out some more little stuff that I've noticed before we get to the big stuff, the meat and potatoes of this video. Like here, how I noticed that the cooler that was on the boat earlier that day by the Ceto pictures is suddenly got the handle broken off. Don't know if that's significant, but it's interesting. Also kind of surprised how nobody has pointed out in this picture that there is clearly at least one mom in that group. And I suspect that it's Katie Hudson Seymour, because she is literally like the only person I have found that has a shorter haircut. I'm talking kids, I'm talking adults associated with this group. I mean, clearly this is a mom vibe. So what boat did she go out on? I'm also very confused on why this portion of the tide line in that far away picture doesn't seem to match up with this picture of the tide line. And sure, there's an argument where you can say, oh, it's just in heavy shadow, but I'm sorry, the water reflects the sunlight. You would get at least a color difference, but anyway. I also strongly suspect that the girl who's at the front of the boat is actually Warren and Carter's sister. Her head shape, her smile, all of it just that feels correct. But again, like, this is all my own opinion. Like, I don't know, you don't know. But the reason I say this is because if it's Katie on this boat with everybody, then that would make them the odd man out in this family affair. Notice how this boat is absolutely not sinking? Like, there's Wyatt still supposedly on the phone. Most of these people are standing in the same place. And look, you can even see Horn Island in the background. But this boat looks like it's about to go under. Guys, how did they magically get this boat to start floating without planing? Because remember, they're supposed to plane it to drain all the water out to stop it from sinking. Now, just the last little thing I want to touch on before I move on to the meat and potatoes is, anybody else think it's weird that the fingers are covering the picture? I mean, truly, when was the last time anybody recorded or took a picture and had their fingers over the camera? Like, especially with the finger, like, coming down over it like this. Like, I genuinely can't understand the mechanics of how they're holding this, because I know I haven't done that since digital cameras. So was this picture video also taken from that same digital camera that they all took the picture at the front of the boat on? One of the first things that piqued my interest in this defamation letter was this Apple Maps picture. Now, you'll notice in the factual background portion, they just say that it arrived at 10:50 on Horn Island, but conveniently makes no mention of when it left, because right here in this picture, it says 10:50, but 10:22 is the leave time, which is a half an hour difference from the 9:56 departure time we've gotten. That's when I started hearing the little buzzing start to go off. Because personally, I don't recognize this version of Apple Maps, so I don't know if this was the actual route they did, or if they just looked up another route and included it. Now, I'm going to go through this chronologically, so keep up. Because now, because of this letter, we know the exact time that the sea tow call was made. And guess what, guys? It wasn't around 4 like they told us, but at 4:48. So that would be 17 minutes after the GPS said that they left Horn Island, which was at 4:31. You'll also notice at 4:48, they canceled the first call. Almost as if they looked up the number, pressed the link, it started to call, they freaked out, canceled it, then gave themselves a breath to calm down, and then they called. Now that would mean that by the end of that call, it was almost 5 o'clock. Almost 2 hours after they noticed the boat first sinking. 2 hours after they supposedly left Nolan on this island. Now, given how close this picture is to this cluster of boats, and this very casual pose that seems to be going on, I think it's absolutely possible that Katie and or Lainey called this group of friends and was like, hey, can you pick us up? Because we know that by 5:34, Katie was on the boat taking Snapchat pictures and having fun with these people, which just so happens to coincide with the 5:52 traveled into Fort Bayou time from the GPS. The Triton then returning to the dock at 6:06 p.m., which would be about 4 minutes after this picture of the guy in the red swim trunks that I think was Carter going out with this group earlier that day. Because I also suspect that this is Carter right here, based on the build, the lighter strawberry hair in the front, and then I think right here is backwards cap Katie, because remember how I said in this picture, it looked like these two people were cuddling up with each other. And by process of elimination, it had to be one of the girls in the blue swimsuits and the red shorts guy. I also suspect that this is Brooks and Kendall right here. You'll notice that it looks like he's wearing a very thick gold chain right here, and Brooks seems to wear this thick gold chain all the time. Now, there's no way for me to positively confirm the identities of these people, but it is a dot that would neatly connect these two boats. Now, fast forwarding to Warren's phone call with the Coast Guard that lasted 21 minutes, starting at 11:13. So that would mean by the time he got off the phone with the Coast Guard, it would be about 11:35. While he's on the phone with the Coast Guard, he and Christine are texting each other. She asked Nolan where Warren's car was, and he says at Jax's house. She says, where is that? Can you send me the address from where you guys launched? He says, yes, ma'am. She said, when was the last time you guys saw him? 3 p.m. Now, this is not a picture of Jax's residence. He sent her the actual location of the boat launch, not from Jax's house where they all supposedly left that morning. Why would he send her a picture of where they put the boat in the water instead of Jax's house that she's literally specifically asking for? Then he sends her the pin of the house next door to Jax's house. Okay, so you've given the wrong address twice now, and then Warren texts her this. We launched the boats yesterday evening and left from here this morning. Because wait a fucking minute, y'all.
I actually stayed with Nolan that night at my buddy's house, and I woke up at my buddy's house, and we went to McDonald's, got food. Nolan was not with me, and I went and got breakfast. I had my buddy's boat hooked up to my truck, and well, first I ran to my house, then I went to McDonald's and came back, and the boat was already hooked up to my truck. My buddy Wyatt and I went, and with my buddies, and we went, filled the top of the boat off, loaded it down with ice, and just got everything ready. Then Wyatt went and put his smaller boat in the water, which is the Palm Beach. He's an 18-foot Palm Beach, and I drove the boat from 4 boat launch to my buddy's grandparents' house.
No wonder he was stuttering all over that story. It was a fucking lie. Because you trying to tell me that the day of all of this, he didn't remember when they put the boats in? He had a whole story about McDonald's and getting the ice and everything. But this means that they put all of those boats in the water the night before, and then everybody came over and had a sleepover party with 10, 15 people. Let's face it, it was probably just a regular party. Now I know you've thought it, I've thought it. A lot of us aren't even sure that Nolan ended up at Horn Island at all, which would explain all of the weird Photoshoppy pictures that we're talking about. Now, if it wasn't for Javon and the coach, I know all of us would be like, did something happen the night before all of this? Because why lie? Why lie about what time you put the boats in the water? Now, after the 20-minute call with the Coast Guard, he then calls Christine back for about a minute. Then at 12:25, Warren gets a phone call from somebody from the Coast Guard that lasts only 2 minutes. So a whole hour has gone in between these calls. Now, mind you, listen to Trayston's side of this story, because there's a bit of a time discrepancy on Trayston's end.
I didn't wake up again until a little after 11 o'clock. And I was my brother coming in the room being like, hey, Warren's trying to get a hold of you. You need to answer the phone. They're looking for Nolan. And I'm half awake, and I pick up the phone. And by this time, nobody had came to the house to grab anything. And Warren gets on the phone, and he's just like, hey, man, he was like, hey, have you talked to Nolan? Anything else? I was like, no, I haven't talked to him, man. He was with that girl last Monday. And he was like, okay. He was like, man, we can't get hold of him. We don't know where he's at. I was like, man, it's Nolan. He's probably just out somewhere with that girl. Like, get hold of the girl, you probably find Nolan. It's no big deal. And he was like, all right. He was like, but we're starting to freak out. We're getting on the phone with Coast Guard. I was like, okay. And at that time, he'd already talked to his mom, Nolan's mom. And he was getting on the phone with Coast Guard. And I'd called. I need to be specific about this. I did not call Warren's phone. I called another one of our buddies' phone, and it was on speakerphone. They were all together. I was talking on my other buddy's phone, talking to Warren. He was dialing Coast Guard because he hung up the phone and was like, hey, this is bye.
So Trayston says he gets the phone call a little after 11. Trayston's all like, oh, I don't know where she is. Even though he's friends with Katie. Like, he keeps calling her that girl, but they were friends. Katie and his sister ran in the same friend group. Mind you, he said that he had already talked to Christine at that point, but Warren told Christine that nobody could find Katie. So they didn't actually talk to Trayston or anybody else about this Katie girl before telling the mom that they couldn't find her. Then you'll notice in that story, he said that they were on the phone with the Coast Guard, and then he was like, oh, they're calling, I gotta go, hanging up. But we now know that that second call, that I've gotta go, they're calling, happened at 12:30. So none of Trayston's story there is making sense. According to the very, very, very first MDR report, dispatch sent a call from Christine to Lieutenant Patrick Carone advising the dispatch of a caller reporting a missing male. So if Warren had called the Coast Guard by that point, spoke to them for 20 minutes, why didn't they reach out to MDMR? Let's not forget that the original statement from the Coast Guard was that they did not receive word of Wells' disappearance until 12:26 when the Jackson County Sheriff's Department reached out for assistance. And they later had to correct this to around 11 p.m., but they maintained that no formal assistance was requested at that time. Because it sounds to me like the Coast Guard wasn't actually notified until after Christine had talked to the Jackson County Sheriff's Department, to which then they called Warren to get more information, but that call only lasted 2 minutes. Then we find out about 30 minutes later, Christine and Warren talk again on the phone at 1 a.m. exactly. Now that is extremely significant because guess what is happening at 1 a.m.?
They come back to my house at around 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, so you mean the same time Christine is on the phone with Warren? Now, mind you, he is trying to claim that that is when they came back to his house, that they had already been there, that they got the phone, and they went to Wyatt's house, and all that stuff happened. Wyatt called 911. But now we know for sure that that is not true, because Jax and his brother didn't call 911 until almost 3 a.m. And this is confirmed by Christine's text to Warren saying that Nolan's dad is at the house to pick up the key. So it seems pretty obvious that Jax is confusing the two times, and the first time they showed up was at 1 a.m. They found out where Wyatt's boat was, they went to that house, Wyatt called 911 on them there, and then they came back, just his father, at about 2:30, an hour and a half later. Which lines up with the Jackson County Sheriff's Office talking to the friends who were on the boat with Nolan that day and reporting back at 1:38. And yet Odom says here that based on the information provided, they don't think Nolan's in any trouble. They don't need Coast Guard, they don't need to search for him. He's probably just chilling at some chick's house. They even say here that Warren agreed to talk to a deputy or investigator, but for some reason talk to them on another friend's phone. Something tells me they more or less had the attitude of, it's just our friend's mom being a little overprotective. I'm sure he's fine. Oh my God, I was going to talk about something else, but I think I just figured something out in real time. I'll save that for another video because I was going over the GPS again, right? Now, we all know that something has been fishy with these GPS coordinates for a while, especially considering that the GPS doesn't seem to stop moving for a very long time, going at a constant slowish speed for 2.5 miles. At no point do they ever mention the stopping, the calling the CTO, all of that stuff. Why isn't the GPS like telling us about that? Now, at about 7:45, the boat was taken to the grandparents' house. Now, for like Warren and Wyatt and everybody to come back together later on, it means that like Warren and Wyatt had to have been the ones to take it there, drop it off, and then come back in their vehicles. Meaning that the Triton would have had to have been docked on land and like in a parking spot. It would just be sitting there unattached to anything on a trailer, right? Yet at 9:32 the next morning, the GPS was powered on. Then it was clearly turned off again, and then it was powered on again at 9:51, and the vessel moved 52 feet. Why and how did it move 52 feet? And the Triton doesn't go back out because Warren was on the boat with his family, and Morgan, Wyatt, and Trayston were on the Palm Beach. And about what time did they go out there?
About 7 o'clock that morning, we had all decided that we were going to go out on the boat and go look for Nolan. Wyatt had already had his boat still in the water. We were on the water from 9:45 to 11:50.
Oh, you mean the exact time frame in which the GPS kept getting turned on, powered on, moved 52 feet, powered on? Y'all, I think that these were the GPS coordinate points for the fucking Palm Beach. Because how would the Triton move 52 feet if it was sitting in a driveway at Wyatt's grandparents' house? And y'all remember, the Palm Beach left before the Triton did. They left Horn Island minutes before. Because again, according to the GPS, the boat was moving the entire time, and it was a good 17 minutes in between it leaving Horn Island and that CTO call. But you may be saying, Jay, the guy said that the Palm Beach was in the water already that morning. It couldn't have traveled to the grandparents' house. But remember, this is what Jack said when they said they wanted to go out and look for him that night.
Thinking about doing it that night.
Yes.
And why didn't you do it that night?
So we already called the Coast Guard at this point. We didn't have access to a boat that was already in the water, ready to go, other than one that I'm just not allowed to use at all. And I was still this close to taking it out.
So where was the Palm Beach, y'all? The Palm Beach was already in the water that morning. How come y'all didn't have a boat that was available for you to use? Because remember, when they were like, oh, they're demanding the address of the boat, they were driving to the grandparents' house. Wyatt and Morgan were. And as it turns out, it's actually quite easy to transfer your GPS memory from one boat to another. In fact, it's so easy if you're doing it from one Garmin to another, there's literally an app you can do it on. Remember I told you literally Joseph McGrath worked for IT for the Ocean Marine Group, which is the group that is owned by Jerry Adkerson? Because my guess is they took the coordinates from the Palm Beach and put it into the Triton, but were so tunnel vision focused on the 4th of July that they didn't even think about the 5th. Because I've told y'all, those GPS plotters and everything, you have to do it manually. It's not like an automatic thing, and it's easily changeable, and we don't know what the Palm Beach was even equipped with. I mean, even the GPS seemed a little confused because there is a literal question mark in this report. Like, why was the GPS turned on 4 times in an hour? Especially here at 9:51, powered on, question mark, vessel moved 52 feet, and then it was turned on again 2 minutes later. So how did they move it 52 feet? Why did they move it 52 feet? Why did they turn off the GPS and then turn it back on? It's almost like Morgan took the Palm Beach and dropped a bunch of people off. That would explain why there are so many data points that are not being accounted for in any of these boys' stories. Because notice, Morgan never tells us what he did after he left in the Palm Beach. Anyway, I'm exhausted. I have spent the last 5 hours recording this video. So if you like what I do and want to support my work, you know where the link is. And also, happy birthday to me. But no, seriously, it's my birthday this weekend. Yay!